Star Wars miniatures.
September 2004 saw the debut of Wizards of the Coast's collectible miniatures game, Star Wars Miniatures. The first 10 sets released featured 60 fully constructed and fully painted figures. The Clone Wars set in 2008 brought change, lowering the number of figures to 40. This would be the norm for the final 5 sets to follow. Characters from across the Star Wars galaxy and timeline were present. Besides the big names like Princess Leia and Han Solo, you could collect more obscure characters, like the little bat guy from the cantina in Episode 4, or this wolf warrior, or this guy that looks like he's from D&D, but not young Anakin. But yes, this cat lady. This game is kind of like a spiritual successor to West End's line of metal Star Wars miniatures for their D6-based wargame and RPG. Star Wars Miniatures had some amazing sculpts. And opposed to a modern miniatures game like Legion, there was a distinct handcraftedness to the figures. You could even pick out different sculptors by their style. The scale was admittedly not consistent. Some figures are comedically sloppy. Regardless, the wide array of characters made for endless strategies while playing skirmishes. As mentioned before, the figures come pre-painted to a certain level of quality, and they're made of nice, bendy plastic. They don't pull an Alderaan when they hit the ground, like 3D prints can. It is also worth noting that there was an entire line of Star Wars miniatures dedicated to just the spaceships, with its own rule set. As for ground-based skirmishes, you can find the comprehensive manual in the description. But the basic gist is, draft an army, take turns moving and then shooting by rolling a d20, use special abilities and, of course, the Force, and the last one standing wins. It was very similar to the Dungeons & Dragons miniatures game of the time. I assure you, this system is fully armed and operational. But like the Death Star, it has its fatal flaws. But first, let's take a look at the light side. It's pretty easy to learn and quick to set up. The game is flexible and it's a cinch to adjust playtime. Draft 25-point armies for a little shootout, or draft 1,000 points to fill your entire Bunta weekend. The Star Killer combo of quick setup and adjustable playtime make it a personal go-to game when there's a time crunch or only casual gamers on hand. On the dark side, the characters are not extremely well balanced. There certainly appears to be a Rebel Alliance bias, for example. We've regularly found in our games that, say, a Rebel worth 14 points can blast their way easily through 35 plus points of Stormtroopers, like Anakin through Younglings. Some units are plain overpowered. Brokiwan Kenobi was banned from tournament play due to being nearly invincible and granting all other figures on his team the blessings of the high ground. Nearly all the game maps were paper, easy to store, easy to destroy. And they'd always have these really big seams in them and like fold marks that were quite obnoxious. The blind buy system was perhaps not particularly conducive to drafting an army. But back to the light side, the game's simple mechanics made it really easy to expound upon, and I'll talk more about that in just a bit. A dark day. On January 28th, 2010, an official statement on the Wizards of the Coast forum stated that they would not be renewing the license for Star Wars miniatures. The community it had fostered was devastated. However, like old Palpy and his long toenails, this game won't die. Yearly tournaments hosted at Gen Con until 2020 still persist online through VassalCon tournaments. There's a robust community of gamers on various Facebook groups and even on a living forum. Fans put together virtual sets or V-sets, which have come out semi-annually since the game was officially discontinued. These include new stat cards to be played with existing figures. Some of them are even from the latest Star Wars media, like Cal Kestis, for example. Yes, there is a new hope for these amazing little figures. You can play the game casually with comrades and kin. You can use them as proxy figures for other Star Wars games. They're theoretically the same scale as Imperial Assault. There's actually a whole community built around making expansions to the 2002 Star Wars Epic Duels game using WOTC SW minis. These charming figures lend a fun tactile boost to any Star Wars role-playing campaign. This game can be modded and augmented to create incredibly engaging scenarios. For example, I've played in games where characters can pick up new weapons or upgrades from different spots on the map. I personally orchestrated a gargantuan crossover game using Star Wars miniatures as the foundation, and it was an absolute blast. The fledgling rebel forces landed on the moon of Fenxel 6, storming the Imperial facilities to liberate the captured Commander Cromwell, who has sensitive information about the vulnerable rebel cause. Armada ships battle overhead, bombarding the surface of the moon with orbital strikes. An Imperial turbo laser on the surface fires back as rebel bombers fly in atmosphere to knock it out. TIE fighters are dispatched to intercept as the insurgents break into the subterranean base and liberate the captives. Needless to say, I'm a big fan of this game. Interested in getting your hands on some figures? Back in the day, the Rebel Storm starter set cost around $19.99. Nowadays, you can typically find the Clone Wars starter set for anywhere between $30 and $60. The original booster pack price was just $10. Sealed boosters on eBay go for anywhere between $50 and $100 now. Lots of figures and singles are found at various prices on eBay and in different Facebook groups, so do some sleuthing. If you want to be on the cheaper side, go ahead and buy the figures without the stat cards. For your own reference, you can just Google a figure's stats and use those. But fair warning, it's a trap! Once you start down the dark path of collecting minis, it will forever dominate your destiny.